Welcome to the Rockin Wellness Podcast, the show that takes you on a voyage to better health, wellness, and happiness that will rock your world. With me, Rachel Joy Olson, your host, your coach, and your biggest fan. All right, welcome to this episode of the Rockin Wellness Podcast. I'm very excited today to be having a conversation with Mary Lin. Mary Lin is the Chinese-Canadian culinary creative behind Mary's Test Kitchen, the YouTube channel and blog where she pushes plant-based cooking to the limit. She's obsessed with food contradictions like chickenless chicken and soy-free tofu, always looking for ways to reinvent the familiar in unexpected ways. What started as a quest to veganize her favorite comfort foods from Canadian, Cantonese, and other Asian cuisines soon evolved into a full-fledged mission to tofufy everything in sight. Love that. But in the background, a villain lurked: chronic tendinitis, painful condition that got in the way of working, pursuing her handcrafted hobbies, and even cooking. Over several years of figuring this out, she finally gave up her first true love, rice, and her best friend, bread, and accepted a fate vegans dread most: keto. This change helped her put the chronic tendinitis on remission. Now able to knead vegan keto bread and seitan dough to her heart's content, Mary hopes to show that if someone does need to go keto for medical reasons, they can still do it in a way that's kind to animals. Rather than focusing on restrictions, Mary embraces all the delicious possibilities that remain. So welcome to the podcast, Mary. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Rachel. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for such a wonderful introduction.
Oh, I love it. I love I have to say, we haven't spoken in quite some time, but we met
Yeah,
quite a few years ago, probably 10 or 12 years ago now, I'm guessing.
10 or 12. It's
Yeah,
been over 10 for sure.
it has. It's
I remember
crazy.
I was about to move to Calgary, and that's when I met you. I was
Yeah.
living in Banff at the time, in beautiful Banff, Alberta, just a paradise. And coming into, I was thinking back on this, I think we were trying to plan a veg fest for Calgary
Yes,
that
and that
didn't
would have
really.
been before any of the Veg Fest
Mm-hmm,
ever came. And I often kick
mm-hmm.
myself that we didn't move forward with that.
Yeah, we didn't move forward, but we did do a lot of things. We were connected, and it really actually helped me launch into Calgary as a freelancer.
I love it. Well, I have to say, even over these years, because I see your stuff come up on social media, and I often think about your story. So I remember when we were sitting in those meetings for the Veg Fest that we were going to do. And I remember sitting in those meetings and you told your story about how and why you went vegan. And I have never forgotten that. I think I've told numerous people about that
Really?
story because it really, I don't know, it was something to remember. So, do you mind sharing your story about why and how you made the change?
Sure. It's been a few years since I've even talked about that story, but let me just set up some background that I don't think I've revealed anywhere else. But I was fresh off a breakup, and this breakup was with a kind of scam artist. So here I am feeling vulnerable. And add to this, I have just finished business school, so I have supply and demand fresh in my mind. I'm working a job that I don't love necessarily. I have a little bit of an ethical qualm with. But it's the weekend and I've just come home from grocery shopping. I have snacks, my fridge is stocked. I'm feeling like I can do this adult thing. I'm prepared. And today I'm going to relax on the couch with some snacks. I'm going to grab a movie. And because I am a broke 20-something, I did not go to Blockbuster. For those of you too young to remember, that is where you used to get movies. I downloaded a whole bunch of movies labeled science fiction. It's my favorite genre. So I decide to find the most science fiction sounding title, one I've never heard of, but it's starring a very famous actor. He was great in Gladiator. His name was Joaquin Phoenix, and the movie was called Earthlings. So I sat down on my couch, chips in hand, ready to be entertained, ready for spaceships, ready for lasers, pew, pew, pew. Maybe some aliens if we're lucky. And within the first 5 minutes, I realized I had been duped. There was not going to be any aliens, spaceships, or lasers.
Sorry, I know I'm laughing because it's just the best story ever.
I mean, how was I supposed to know that this science fiction movie was going to be a real life, not fiction at all, account of how animals are being used by humans?
So essentially, you chose a horror movie.
Yeah, I was disappointed, sure. At the same time, I'm telling you, I was in this vulnerable like feeling emotional state. I was also on the couch with snacks. It was also the weekend. I was also tired. I was also lazy. So I didn't get up and change the movie. I think, now I don't remember quite because this was such a long time ago, but I do believe they started us off soft, something like how humans use animals for entertainment. We don't like to see animals suffering just so that we can get some giggles, right? We're not out here trying to cage elephants who are free, want to be free. They're so intelligent. They have families. We don't want to see them getting beaten for circus tricks. So that was the easy in. And again, I'm relaxed. I'm agreeing with everything I'm seeing on screen. I mean, agreeing with the narrator, I should say, and not agreeing with any of the abuse that I was seeing. And as I watched on, and it was quite emotional, and they went into how animals are used for medical testing, cosmetics, um, and how they're farmed for food and clothing, even. Things that I had always kind of known about. I mean, I grew up in Vancouver, BC. It's a very hippie kind of place, and there's always protests going on. Sometimes it's about animal rights, sometimes it's about animal welfare. I have definitely seen the posters about the horrifying conditions that the chickens face, the ones that go into KFC, but I've always walked by quickly. These are things I kind of knew, but when faced with this kind of smack in my face, I didn't want to watch it. I really didn't. And I was crying and I was feeling guilty. And it just kind of clicked in my mind. Um, it felt like an audible click. And I know that sounds pretty out there, but I felt like there was a click in my mind. And I thought, I can't support this. I can't allow my hard-earned voting dollars to go to any kind of abuse of animals. So I decided I'd try my best. And I would probably fail. I am someone who starts a diet in the morning and forgets by lunch. I was definitely going to fail, but I was going to give it an honest try and not beat myself up if I failed. And it was so weird that it was not that hard. It was actually not that hard. I already ate oatmeal for breakfast. I usually had a sandwich for lunch, so I just made it a veggie sandwich and a veggie soup. And I usually had cream in my coffee, but it gave me stomach aches anyways, so I just went black and it was fine. And then for dinner, instead of rice, vegetables, and a meat, I would have rice, vegetables, and a bean. So honestly, not that hard. But then again, I was lucky enough to live in Vancouver, someplace that I had been exposed to these ideas already, so that I knew it shouldn't be too hard. And I think this is a big one, and this is what made it so easy for me, is I grew up with the belief that vegetables were good for you.
Yeah, you already had the
I,
foundation.
yeah. So I didn't have any fear that I would be missing out on nutrients. I was afraid that I'd be missing out on tastes and
Right.
culinary excitement, going out to eat, but not of like just living a normal life.
Right. You knew your body would be nourished. Well, I have to
Yeah,
say, that's a pretty traumatic way to be introduced to what the reality, sadly, of what's going on. But it, I believe that like your story is interesting because it happened for a reason. It was like at the right time, at the right place. You were in the right frame of mind. And who would have known by picking that title, Earthlings, would have been
it was
what you
fate.
saw? It was fate.
Hmm.
It was fate. And I think that I'm sure you can attest to that has now launched you to not only into making these personal decisions, but also into a fairly successful YouTube series.
Yeah, it took a while. It
Everything
took a
does.
while, but yes,
So
I
now you've
cannot
run,
believe it.
so you've got Mary's Test Kitchen, which is always, I mean, I've made your ginger beef and a few other things that have the recipes there, which I absolutely love.
Ginger
So
beef, the Calgarian favorite. I mean,
yeah, it's
it's
the
still supreme.
best. It's so good. I know we can't, that's probably one of our favorites.
It's probably one of
Um,
the most unhealthiest. I
it
mean, with the
is.
cup of sugar that's in it or something.
Well, that's just the thing, right? You've got to have the sweetener. And I've
But
tried
yeah.
making it when with
Mm-hmm.
not as much of that, and it
Mm-mm.
never turns out properly.
No, that's just what it is. It's a balance of flavors. And if you just can't have that much sugar, just have less or none, or just keep it for special occasions. It's how I think of it, I guess.
Yeah,
But we can have it if we want
abs
to.
100%. I think that's how I look at food as well, is that this is not about depriving yourself per se. Yes, we want to fuel our body, but there is something special about having those culinary experiences
Mm,
and those tastes and flavors. And I think that's part of being a human and actually living,
yeah.
right? I think a
Yeah.
lot of people, when they think about making the switch, think exactly the same as you just did, is I'm going to miss out on those flavors. I'm going to miss out on those experiences. But I think back then, those of us who went vegan back then probably felt it a little bit
Mm-mm.
more than people who have gone now. Because I think back then, I
Oh,
mean, the
yeah.
reason why you did your stuff, the reason why I wrote my books is because we had to make it.
Yeah.
There was no opportunity really for us to go out and have those delicious experiences because they weren't
Hmm.
available back then. At least
How
they weren't
many?
in Calgary.
Yeah. Well, see, even in Vancouver, there was maybe three that I can think of. There's the Nam
Okay,
vegetarian,
which has been around
which is
forever.
vegetarian, but a lot of vegan options.
Yeah.
There was, I think it was called Wallflower, and I'm not sure if it still exists.
Okay.
And then there's one that I'm thinking, the Foundation, which is I think vegetarian, and of course they had vegan options, but like literally three, and it was limited, and it
That's
was
right.
very hippie-ish. It was
Hmm.
hummus and vegetables, you know?
That's right. And that's what a lot of
Tempeh.
people equate, right? Is well, I don't want to go to those hippie
I
spots.
love those
I do
options
too.
still, but you kind of had to, part of the appeal, I think, was that it was healthy as well.
Hmm.
Like because I knew it was healthy, it tasted even better.
Yeah. Well, because you already had that foundation of
Yes, that was the
knowing that,
thing.
these foods
Yeah.
are, and that you want to eat foods that are good for
Yeah.
you.
And not everybody feels that way, for
No,
sure.
no, that's right. And like you said, we can have those treats, we can have those things that
Hmm.
taste good that let's not be fooled. Just because it's plant-based doesn't mean it's healthy for you,
Yeah.
but we can
Oreos are not
still,
a health food.
that's right. That's basically just chemicals in a box, but but we can still have those experiences if
Hmm.
we want them.
Exactly.
So you have developed a series called Will It Tofu, which I think is awesome. And I love seeing your your creations and what you come up. So tell us what inspired you to create the Will It Tofu series and how did you come up with that concept of experimenting with these kind of weird and non-traditional ingredients to make tofu, which everybody equates to as soy.
Yeah. Actually, I love tofu. I love it so much.
Me too.
Through the years of Mary's Test Kitchen, people have asked me about, alternatives to the tofu in my recipes. And I always say something like, use whatever you want. Like, go ahead and use beans. No one wants to use beans. Okay. I think they're great options. Other people don't think so. The other thing is, like you mentioned in the beginning, I had to go vegan keto for my tendonitis, leaving me with delicious, wonderful options, but mostly soy tofu. And frankly, I still had beans in my pantry. I missed them so much. So I had the thought of doing this series for a while, applying the traditional method of making tofu to other ingredients, but I didn't get the kick in the pants until I saw real soy-free tofu on the store shelves. There's one by a Canadian company called Big Mountain Foods. It's just labeled soy-free tofu, and you can get it in the United States as well. And they're making it from fava beans. And I thought, I'm too late. I thought of this idea and someone beat me to it. But I thought, I just got to try it myself too. So I did. And the process is extremely similar to making regular soy tofu, except there is a step where I separate the starch from the bean milk. And that is what allows us to gather only the protein part, coagulate it, form it into a block, press the excess water out, and then turn it into an alternative that is almost exactly like regular soy tofu. So you can make it soft, you can make it firm, and it cooks like regular tofu. So you can air fry it, you can fry it for deep fry it if you want. You can boil it, you can braise it, it doesn't break down. And it's a great concentrated form of plant-based protein.
That's awesome. What a great way for people, because there are people that do have soy allergies and legitimately
Hmm.
cannot eat soy. Sadly, there's a lot of misinformation around what soy does to the body. It always makes me sad because I know how healthy it is, especially if it's a nice organic option. And of course, if
Yeah.
you can make it yourself, like homemade tofu is doesn't even
Hmm.
compare to store-bought tofu. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
completely different
The f-
experience.
hmm the fresh taste. And
Oh,
I want to add one thing that I learned recently because I don't know if you know about the TikTok ban that was like 1 day long, but a lot of people from TikTok went over to this Chinese app called Red Note,
yeah,
where we could communicate with, people from China.
yeah.
And one thing I learned from them is that they are baffled when anybody mentions that we think that's in America or in Canada, some people think soy is bad for you. It
I
messes with
know.
your hormones. They are baffled because it is traditional food that is known to be healthy. Everyone eats it, fresh, fermented, any kind of way.
And it's also been
Whole,
known that traditions that or cultures that traditionally eat a diet high in tofu are healthier.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think actually it's neat to have had that experience. I'd be so excited to speak to some of the people that they must just be like, what is wrong with you people?
Yeah, I mean, there's much more over there. I just love learning about the culture. As you
Hmm.
know, that I'm a Chinese Canadian, but I don't know that much about actual Chinese culture from China nowadays, right? All
Hmm.
of my information is from my parents and family, so it's old information.
Hmm.
What's going
Hmm.
on now? That's so exciting.
Absolutely.
But
Okay,
back
so
to,
so oh, that's certainly a topic I'd love to learn more of because I love the history and stuff of those cultures. I think it's because I mean, it's way off topic, but I feel as a Canadian sometimes I don't know what my culture is, right?
yeah,
That's why
yeah.
I think I'm fascinated with other cultures because I feel like I don't have one. Does that make sense?
No, definitely, because we're a mosaic and there's not just one way to be Canadian.
No, that's right. And I love that we can embrace all the different cultures. I wish we would embrace it more. Like I want to learn more about all the different
Yes.
cultures and, not be made feel bad because I don't know and because I do want to
Mm,
learn, right? But
yeah.
anyways, that's a whole
Yeah.
other topic.
I think we're all navigating it with our sensitivities and all that
Yes,
stuff. But I
that's
think,
right.
a genuine heart is kind of all you really need to start.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. All right, so let's come back to tofu, our favorite food. I can eat tofu every day, and I basically do. I love it. I can't get enough of it. And that's why this is so fun, though, because it also can get boring, right? So it's kind of nice to use some other ingredients and things. So can you share us some of the kind of maybe your most surprising or successful tofu creations that you've made on the show that maybe you were like, I had no idea this would work, and it was awesome.
Yes. All right. With a little background, I started with, I think obviously we're going to try high protein beans. That'll work, right? That's why fava beans was the first one I tried. But pumpkin seeds, also very high in protein, high in fat as well. This is something I just thought which maybe go okay. But when I made the pumpkin seed milk and put it on the stove to boil it, just to take it to the right temperature, to add a coagulant, usually you have to add something like calcium sulfate, nigari, lemon juice, or even vinegar to make it curdle, right? To press into blocks. Pumpkin seed milk curdles by itself. All you do is heat it up, it curdles by itself. The true one ingredient tofu, real high protein tofu.
So you
You
didn't
don't
have
have
to
to add
add
anything.
anything to it. You just boiled
Nothing.
it to the right temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's great.
And instead of eating like tofu, though, it kind of eats like cheese because
Mm.
with a few blocks, you're kind of stuffed. And it makes sense because it's super high in protein, but it's also giving you quite a lot of plant-based fat, which they say is good for you.
That's right.
Um,
Well, and
and
pumpkin
so
has so many other good nutrients in there for our bodies,
absolutely.
right?
So I don't know why, I don't know why. Is it the mineral content? Is it the zinc? Is it the magnesium? I don't know why, but it does.
Ugh.
Hemp seeds are the same way. Um, and the other one that was very interesting that I didn't think was going to work. I didn't think this was going to work at all because I had a failure with a bunch of beans. I blamed the high starch content, like I couldn't get the starch out of the milk with a manual extraction. Chickpeas. Now, chickpeas are everybody's darling right now. They're just like the plant-based darling of the culinary world. Everybody's excited about chickpeas. I didn't think this was going to work. Now, there is a chickpea tofu, and it's based on Burmese tofu. And what they use there is they use the whole chickpea, they grind it up, and then they cook it. The starch in that mixture sets up kind of like polenta. And so you can make what's called Burmese tofu, or people call it chickpea tofu. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make a high protein version. So I used chickpeas and went through the same traditional method of making tofu. That's grinding the beans up, filtering out the fiber, turning it into milk, letting the milk sit for a while so that the starch could settle to the bottom. And then I could skim off that high protein milk and just use that to coagulate. And I took that to a boil. And that one coagulated itself as well. Miracle upon miracles, like chickpeas, will wonders never cease. So it curls itself, number one. And number two, when you press it overnight and then reveal, it becomes a super bouncy, wonderful tofu that has this wonderful chickpea flavor. Like, how chickpeas have a sort of like a savory, almost chickeniness to it.
Hmm.
And it's just great. So if there are two tofus, soy-free tofus that you have to try making, it's either pumpkin seed tofu or chickpea tofu, the high protein version, because they are the easiest and they are the best.
So those are your two favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So okay, so those are your favorites. They worked out well. What didn't work?
Beans. My favorite bean in the entire world is kidney beans. They're
Okay.
just the best. I don't know why I love them so much. Is it the potato-like texture? Is it the flavor? Not sure. It's probably both. So I tried kidney beans. It became a slimy mess. All I did was make a very fancy bean dip. Black beans wouldn't even like get through the nut milk bag to make milk. It was so slimy. It was so gross. My audience asked for flax tofu. And you can only imagine, if you've ever made flaxseed egg, you can only imagine how disgusting that was. So,
Do
yeah.
you show the flops on your show as
Oh,
well?
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's will it tofu, not this will definitely tofu.
Right,
So,
right. So it's an experiment. Yeah.
yeah.
Every time you
Success.
go in.
Yeah, it didn't start out that way. The first episode of Will It Tofu wasn't really supposed to be part of a series. It was just, here's how to make soy-free tofu. I've already tried the different ways. But with all the requests that came in, I just couldn't do all the testing beforehand. I had to take the audience along for the ride. And
Right.
luckily they like it.
So is that how you choose your ingredients then on what to tofu? Is that it sounds like your audience has loved the series so far and it sounds like you get them engaged. Is that mostly then what you do is you now are taking requests on let's see and who wants to know kind of thing?
Kind of. I'm kind of rebellious. Rachel, I have a problem. If someone tells me to do things, I don't want to. Maybe that's why I'm self-employed.
You and me both.
I'm It's kind of a joke though. I'm an amazing employee. If anybody wants to hire me because for some reason I don't want to do this anymore, let me just tell you I'm an amazing employee. But that said, the audience does come up with a lot of requests, and many times I do take their ideas. I have my own catalog in here, right? In my mind, a list of things I think will work, and I want to work through them. And if those kind of meet up with the audience requests, then I will do it definitely. The
Okay.
other thing I will do is if they just will not stop requesting it. So flaxseed tofu was one of them. They just kept requesting flax. And I thought, this is definitely not going to work. But because so many people upvoted those requests, I had no choice.
Right. So you were able to do it and prove everybody wrong.
Well, I proved that we could try.
Yes. So do you have a special selection process for ingredients or is it just random?
It's kind it, it's kind of random, but it's also kind of what I think will work. And what I think will work is anything with a higher protein content and less
Okay.
starch. Now, I have been proven wrong with chickpeas. They're relatively low in protein.
Right.
Um, so because I've been proven wrong, at this point in time, I will try anything.
Hmm. Well, that's really cool. That's so neat. So, which tofu do you personally like to eat the most still?
Soy tofu.
You still love the soy tofu.
Here's
Yep.
the thing.
Yeah.
Like soy tofu has been eaten like in China for thousands of years. There is a reason why soy is supreme, and they don't promote other forms of tofu as much at all, really.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's a
soy
complete
is supreme.
protein, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
a complete
Mm-hmm.
protein that most people don't realize. Again, I think it's been given a bad name over here because of
Mm-hmm.
agriculture, right? That industry maybe doesn't want you to
For
eat
sure.
tofu, right?
Oh, they want
But
to they want to keep all the soy to feed pigs. That's what it
that
is.
that's right. That's
I
right.
mean, the 90 something percent of all soy grown is for animal feed,
So
for
if it's so
cattle,
bad, why
for
are we feeding it to
Mhm.
them?
Yep, yep. So they
Anywho,
want to steal our tofu, those
yeah.
meat eaters. Like, what's wrong with stop eating my food, meat eaters.
Hmm.
Just
That's
kidding.
right. No, it's true.
No, but
Um,
soy tofu, uh, one, I like it, but number two, it is the most accessible.
it
So
is,
even though I
yes.
love to make tofu, it's not enough for me to eat. So I feel like what I'm doing is actually adding to the science rather than adding to what people can do in their lives practically, because this is fun for an afternoon event. But to do this every single day or on a large scale at home, I don't really think it's practical. I hope that people, entrepreneurs out there will take these ideas and create businesses. I hope someone sees my high protein chickpea tofu video and says, you know what? I can do this. I can make a business out of this.
Right,
That's what I want.
because you're right. It's not realistic to say, "Hey, people, if you want to eat this way and you want to eat healthy, you have to make your own." Because it's time consuming, isn't it?
Oh,
Okay, so
yes.
all right, so Mary, can you tell us a little bit about so we've gone through tofu, which we both know and love very much. It is a staple in our diet. You cannot convince me that it is bad for you. Again, thousands of years in Chinese heritage and history cannot deny that. We just can't deny that. That's
Hmm.
just the reality for us in our world. If people choose not to eat soy, that's totally okay. We
Yeah.
can always give them options.
Hmm.
But I would die without tofu. All right. So, can you tell us a little bit? So, we've got your Will It Tofu series. What about your upcoming spin-off series, Will It Cheese?
Yeah,
And what can viewers expect from this new venture? Super excited to hear about this.
this was one of the most requested spin-offs ever. It started from the very beginning. Like, if it can tofu, will it cheese? Like, because making tofu is very much like making cheese. The
Mhm.
traditional method of making dairy cheese involves basically the same steps. Now, there can be additional steps for aging, but basically the same. So it's going to be I'll be deep diving into how dairy cheese is made and then seeing what we can take from it to make plant-based cheese. What can stay the same? What must be different? What must be different? We don't know.
So, what challenges then do you anticipate in creating these plant-based cheeses from these weird ingredients compared to making tofu, even?
I don't know. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
mystery.
Is it? It's just going to be a
It's kind of a
fun
mystery. I
experiment.
mean, we have made, like on Mary's Test Kitchen, we have made vegan cheese in the past. So we have made easy, quick cheeses where we take a blend of ingredients along with flavorings to make something that kind of tastes like cheese, maybe kind of feels like cheese, maybe kind of melts like cheese if there's like agar and tapioca starch in it. But and we've also made fermented cheese. So we have blended cashews. We've had made our own probiotic starter cultures. We have combined those and made fermented cream cheeses. We have made firm cheeses. But we've really stuck to the ingredients that are really common right now in the vegan cultured cheese culinary world, cashews and what's the other one? Almonds is what you're going to find kind of out there in the marketplace, but also on blogs, just out there in the internet. But I want to know, well, what if you use peanuts? What if you use lentils? What if you use sesame seeds? What will happen? I just want to add to the collective knowledge. And this is also something the audience of Will It Tofu has been clamoring for. So, gotta do what the audience wants. I kind of don't have a choice.
Absolutely. Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to see what ingredients you come up with. Will it cheese? Cheese being one of my favorite foods. Well, before I went plant-based, still is though. Love cashew cheeses, love all those cheeses. But you're right, it does kind of get a little bit when it's just all the nuts. So what if you're somebody who has a nut allergy? Then what do you do? So I think that that series might be a good way for people to discover that. So I guess going forward, my question is, how come you haven't made a business where you are supplying where you're supplying the tofu and the chickpea tofus and things like
It's
that?
probably because I know how much work
Yeah, it is a lot of
running a
work.
manufacturing business. Well, I could imagine how much work running a manufacturing business would be like. Um, I had a friend who started a donut startup. Her name is Mandy, and she started Frickin' Donuts in Edmonton. So she started in the farmers markets, and then she had a actual freestanding store, kind of cafe. They moved down to Victoria, same business, working morning to night, dark to dark, physically demanding, absolutely so strenuous. And me sitting over here with my chronic tendonitis for only in remission for the last couple of years. Okay. So, like the 10 years before that, I was suffering maybe 2 hours of actual work time allowed. I would just never. And now that I have my freedom back, so to say, not to say that I will never do it. It's just that I think that there are other people that are more equipped to do so. And I would be excited if they came onto the market using my ideas. And if they would give me credit, that would be great.
For sure. And fair enough, because you're right. It is a lot of work. Any food business, restaurant business, manufacturing, it is nonstop. I actually, give a lot of credit and a lot of, I'm inspired by people in our community who have kept their restaurants going through even some of the tough times, and they're able to
Yeah.
constantly, do that because it's not an easy business, the food business, as we know, especially nowadays with the prices the way they are.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
would love to support our vegan restaurants more, but I literally cannot afford to.
I know it's a lot. It's really sad. Sadly it is, right? And then they
Yeah.
suffer, and it's true. I
Mm-hmm.
completely agree with you. I try
It's
to
a
support.
downward
It
spiral.
is. I try to
So,
support as much as I can too, but it just gets crazy. And it's not only the vegan
mm-hmm.
restaurants. It's actually, any
Mm-hmm.
restaurant out there, that it's just the prices are getting so high.
Mm-hmm.
That's why
Mm-hmm.
learning how to make some of this stuff on your own, you can do it. It doesn't have to be hard. And what I love about things like tofu, for example, is that they are not expensive. You can actually eat a tofu based diet to get a complete protein source with a few veggies, a little bit of rice if you eat that. And you've got a very cheap and easy, wholesome whole food meal, right? With all the
Mm-hmm.
nutrients that you need. So let's kind of jumping into that diet thing. Let's talk a little bit about your switch into the vegan keto diet because, we know a lot about keto. I've never been a fan of it only because it's always talked about as high meat based diet. And I just don't believe in that. I think it causes too much problems in the diet and causes too many digestive issues. For somebody who's had a lot of digestive issues and who used to eat a lot of meat, I couldn't imagine. I would be so sick. But there is a way to do it vegan. So I would love to know, tell everybody what motivated you to adopt this lifestyle. And of course, we know that, you had your tendonitis and that sort of thing. But what made you even think about going that way and why did you figure out that it would work?
Well, I have to start out by saying that keto is not for everyone. Vegan keto is not for everyone, but vegan can be for everyone. Just bottom line. How I started is how far back do we need to go? Let's think. 2018, 2019-ish is when I heard about autophagy and a fasting. Now that sounds like something I would never do. like fasting because I'm a food content developer. When would I have the time? I am always testing, thinking about food, eating it. When do I have time to fast? But I let this science marinate in the background. Meanwhile, I am always looking for ways to improve my so-called hand budget. So, like I said, I struggled with chronic tendonitis for 7 years after getting diagnosed. But before that, I had symptoms for years and years. I just didn't know what it was. And just to be clear, the tendonitis was affecting my hands, my elbows, basically my arms, my back. And I didn't know at the time, but also my ankles. I thought it was something else. I thought that was just being old, stiff. It was in my ankles, though. That was tendonitis. And it's just pain from regular everyday activities, from working on my computer to chopping vegetables to opening a can of soup to holding a book to read it. My hands would hurt. Those tendons in among the musculature there would just throb and feel like there was glass inside. When it was really bad, I just laid there. I literally just didn't do anything. It was just so painful, but it would ebb and flow. And over time, I I searched for answers in medicine and I went to my regular doctor. All they did was give me painkillers. It doesn't really solve anything, not to mention you're not supposed to be on those painkillers for very long. Eventually, I decided pain relief wasn't really the goal. I wanted to solve what was going on. So I tried many things, from the, traditional medical side all the way to the very kooky. I mean, at one point, I convinced myself, have you heard of this thing called tapping?
Yep.
Where you just tap where the pain is, and then you tell yourself that the pain isn't there. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with you.
Yeah.
I did it once, and I was like, a few minutes later, I felt relief. I was like, wow, it's all in my head. Thank God, this pain is in my head. I can cure it by thinking opposite. The next day, I tried it. It didn't work. It must have been a coincidence, or placebo. I'm not saying that it doesn't help other people. I'm just saying for me, it wasn't the key. That wasn't
Mhm.
it. Um, but like I said, I tried many things and I did find some things that worked for me. Exercise. Because I couldn't work, I would go on these long hikes with a friend that was also not working at the time. We'd go to Cantonese, we'd go to Banff, we'd go to Canmore, do these long, crazy hikes, 3 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. I noticed that at hour two, my pain was gone. I, that was very interesting. After our long hike, we'd go to pho, we'd have some noodles, a big meal as a reward. The pain would always come back. That's just an idea that was in my head that exercise helped. So I had a routine where I would exercise a lot during the day in between working, and I would get about 2 hours of work done per day. And you can imagine the effects on my finances. It was just not great.
Mhm.
So, but I kind of accepted it. Like I was living up years of this routine until I started taking this whole food supplement, which had probiotics and prebiotics, because I had heard that it could improve your gut health. And at the time, I was dealing with allergies. So I thought maybe it could help settle my immune system. Little that I didn't expect this, but without me noticing, my hand budget went from 2 hours to 4 hours. It was my partner who noticed and was like, wow, you're working a lot today. You've been working a lot all week. What's happening? It's like, wow, wait a second. What's different? That's the supplement. What the heck? I thought I was eating a whole foods vegan diet. I think that I am the healthiest diet person on earth. Well, not really, but I think I'm doing everything right diet-wise. Wait, maybe there's something to do with my diet. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe something's triggering me. Maybe it's the allergies that translated into a weird symptom. We're all different. Maybe. The idea of fasting comes back to me. And by this time, I'm taking these long breaks from YouTube. I'm taking these long breaks from work. I can fast now. So I start slowly, ever so slowly, going from just eating 3 meals a day with no snacks, and then I was comfortable with eating just lunch and dinner. Eventually, I was only eating dinner. I'm thinking now the autophagy is going to work for me. Did anything change? No. It didn't change. I still had tendonitis. I still only had about 4 hours of hand budget to work with. My finances, still terrible. But there was a little idea in my head that maybe I should try an extended fast. The autophagy, maybe I can get more powerful, better autophagy. Maybe I can heal myself. I've heard all these crazy stories. Why not me? It's far-fetched, but I'm going to try anything at this point. So I did. I started with a 24-hour fast. Now, let me also say that this is not for everyone. It's probably not for most people. Really, really proceed with caution. Check with your doctor. Keep your friends in the loop to keep you grounded because I think this can become dangerous. Just with that, I did a 24-hour fast. And keep in mind, I had been doing one meal a day for a long time and it has been comfortable. One big meal. Okay, I'm not losing weight. This is not a weight loss thing. I'm trying to heal myself. 24-hour fast went by pretty easy. 48-hour fast, and it was easy physically, mentally difficult because at every meal time, I'm asking myself, what's for dinner? What should I eat? And then I remind myself, oh, I'm fasting. Darn it. I love eating food. Food is pleasurable. It's like how I get my dopamine hit. But then some time later, some time passes. The tendonitis hasn't been really affected. I haven't really had a tendonitis benefit, but there was like a little bump on my eye. It got in the way of my eyeliner, and that disappeared during one of the fasts. And I was like, what the heck? What else can improve? My digestion really improved, my energy level really improved, and I loved the fact that I only had to cook like one time a day. And so if I had a longer fast, and I wouldn't have to cook, I wouldn't have to meal prep, and that was really appealing to my lazy side. So I decided to try this 7-day fast. I mean, I had heard that this was basically the limit that you could do safely without, being at a center for fasting. So I decided to try it. On day 3, I woke up with no pain. I had been living with at least low-grade pain every single day, even if I was doing my exercises, things like that. I would always wake up with pain. I would always wake up with stiff ankles as well. Day 3, I got up, and not only did I have zero pain in my hands and arms, I didn't have stiff ankles. Something that I didn't even think was tendonitis, something that I thought was, that's just you getting old. So I realized that by day 3, usually you're in ketosis. Your body is in a state of burning fat for fuel primarily instead of sugar for fuel or glycogen for fuel. And so that idea that ketosis was a way to reduce my pain crystallized in my mind. And that's when I really started taking my diet seriously. Well, what can I eat? What can't I eat? Let me try taking sugar out of my diet. Stop putting sugar in any sauces. Stop eating candy when it comes home because I didn't buy it. Somebody else bought it. But if it's in front of me, I'm going to partake.
Right.
No more. So I just tried that. Because I was eating only one meal a day, it was easy to track what changed. So one day I add some candy. 5 minutes later, I'm feeling a slow throbbing, not what I would call pain necessarily, but I knew it was from the sugar. Next time I tried bread, it took about 20 minutes to start feeling the effects. The next time I tried pasta, and lo and behold, there was no pain. The next day, however, I felt it. I woke up with pain. So different foods affected me differently. Eventually, I figured out that keto was the answer very begrudgingly. At first, I only used it as a treatment. When I had a chronic pain flare up, I would get into ketosis because fasting is just a thing that you have to be mentally prepared for. It's a whole thing. But a keto diet, much more manageable. And then within a few days, my flare up would go away, and I would slowly add in the foods back, like rice, potatoes, maybe some crackers, maybe a chip or two, maybe a cookie. It would always eventually build up for me to have a huge flare up. And this would make me have to stop working. I would have to stop cooking. I would have to stop crochet. I would have to stop reading books with my, physical books. Eventually, I got really sick and tired of it. And I thought, no, I'm changing my channel theme. I'm no longer making bread recipes. I'm no longer making rice recipes. I'm just going to make food that I can actually eat without affecting my tendonitis. And that's when I fully committed to, well, going keto like 90% of the time because, you got to live life.
Absolutely. But I think the biggest lesson out of all of this is that diet affects how we feel,
Mm,
period. It is our fuel. It is if we are feeding and fueling our body with high performance nutrition or high quality nutrition, we perform at a higher level. And tendinitis and chronic pain is nothing more than inflammation in the body. It's
it's
what it
true.
is. And so,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether I think a person decides to go keto, whether they found something else that works for them, because
Mm-hmm.
we're all so different. And I think using ourselves as a science experiment is actually really important because you did that. You did that through trial and error. This worked, this didn't. This worked, this didn't. This worked. Okay, then you figure out exactly. But again, I love how you said the disclaimer on fasting because
Mm-hmm.
it's not for everyone. And if you've got a
Mm-hmm.
chronic condition, we have to be really careful about that. So we are not condoning just stopping eating. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really important for those who are listening
Absolutely
to
not.
realize that. However, what a fast, especially at the beginning, I think can do is it allows you then to add in foods and see how your body responds because the key is
Exactly.
getting rid of that inflammation. And
Mhm.
sadly, a lot of our processed, you know, well, carbohydrates are so processed, sadly, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and
The ones that are most tempting. Now, I have to say that
yes.
sometimes I will get it into my head because Dr. Greger releases a video about how good sweet potatoes are for you. And I will convince myself, you can have some sweet potatoes. It won't hurt you. Unfortunately, in my condition right now, it is something that will affect me greatly.
Well, and I think that's
But
again the
maybe not
key.
forever.
That's
Hmm.
right. And not for everyone, right? So I
Totally.
think
I,
for
I
many
think I'm
people,
weird.
no, I just think that there are certain conditions that the body has embraced for one reason or another. And this might just be what you need to do for now. Then the body will
Hmm.
heal, it will reset. And then maybe one day when the inflammation is gone, you might be able to bring in some of those foods. Because for a lot of people, sweet potatoes, high in fiber, high in lots of vitamins and minerals, they are
Hmm.
extremely, they're very good for
Yeah,
people.
for sure.
But we are all so
Hmm.
individual. That's why it's so important for people. And I think many of us to stay open minded and to recognize that what works for one isn't always going to work for another, right? We're not
Absolutely.
all going to fit into a little box. And I think, I really commend you for taking that opportunity to trial and error that because that's what it takes. I always say to people, here's a baseline to follow, but recognize just because it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Try it out and see how you
Hmm.
feel, right? To see how you feel. And sadly, it's also, how our food is sprayed, how it is grown, where did it come from? A lot of this chronic inflammation is happening because of all the chemicals and the garbage that's found in our food.
I would say that I don't know much about that. I
Hmm.
just don't. So I can't really say.
Yeah.
But what I can say is the food system now of today is completely different than it was for even our grandparents. So that wasn't that long ago.
Absolutely.
So
No,
things
it
have changed
wasn't.
quickly. So I have no doubts that whatever is in our environment is affecting us now.
Oh, 100%. Or yeah, it's sad, too bad. Because even what seemingly healthy foods sometimes don't feel that healthy anymore, right?
Hmm.
Like if this was back in the day in our grandparents' day and they were, making bread in a certain way, I'll just use that as an example, you may have been able to eat it back then. Is it different? We don't know, but
Yeah,
it's
we don't
affecting
know.
people very differently. So when you first tried this and you first were kind of going through this, have there been any other kind of misconceptions or challenges related to combining veganism and the keto diet that you've kind of come across?
For me personally, it was never a thing I thought couldn't happen. I obviously, I Because I came at keto from a medical point of view, so I knew that keto was something that was prescribed for, say, epilepsy. Now there's some science digging into the effects of keto with Parkinson's and other
Mhm.
conditions like that, neurological conditions.
Yeah.
And I basically just took those macros, the medical keto macros, which is about, I believe, 70% fat, a 10% protein. I mean, it's very little protein. And try to make it my diet as close to that as possible with a vegan approach with plant-based foods. Realized that was way too much and pulled back to what worked for me. So I
Yes.
eat probably only maybe 60% fat, a lot more protein, maybe 20% protein or more. It really depends on the day. And sometimes I'm having 20 grams of carbohydrates. But now I've been in this probably 3 years about. I can eat up to like 75 grams, even 100 grams on my active days and still stay in a state of ketosis, which your regular keto practitioner, the chiropractors that preach keto, animal-based keto, they'll say that's way too many carbs. You'll be kicked out of ketosis at 30 grams of net carbs. That is simply not my experience. And I've tested myself. So, all that
J-
to say, it's different for everyone,
That's right.
but it might be easier with a plant-based approach.
Hmm. That's right. If you're educated on kind of what your high
That's
protein,
true.
high
I
fat,
mean,
right?
I think here's the thing. I don't think it would be easy for anybody. I think that if you really have to be keto, and I think that very rarely will anyone have to be keto. I think it's something that you try when everything else has failed,
Hmm.
or when your doctor prescribes you a medical keto diet.
Right. Right. And you've done it so well in that you've done the research, you've really done it according to science, right? You're not just saying, I'm just going to eat nothing but fat now and throw myself into ketosis, right? I think it's really important to remember that I think regardless of what diet we choose, it's important to make sure we're still getting that well-rounded approach. We're
Hmm.
still getting the nutrients that we need and that we're not just, you know,
I would say
starving
that,
ourselves to
hmm,
death.
for
Right?
sure. But I would say that we are so lucky these days where there's lots of online tools,
Oh,
even
yeah.
free tools that are high quality, like Chronometer, chronometer.com. Even the free function is very useful. It pulls data from the USDA database and other databases,
Yeah.
and you can formulate, it will tell you how much micronutrients is in anything, how much protein, fat, and what I'm trying to say,
Carbs.
carbohydrates,
Yeah.
as well as your vitamins, right? And
Yeah.
minerals. So I leaned heavily on that at first because I would create a recipe. I think I'm going to make this for dinner, plug it into Chronometer, realize the ratios are all off. And then I just kind of play with the ingredient amounts, making sure I have enough potassium. Potassium is one of the things that when you take out potatoes, it is harder to get,
Hmm.
but it's possible and it takes effort. This is something that I would never, ever recommend anybody to do all willy-nilly, like as a weight loss thing or for any, I don't know, superficial reason, because is very restrictive. It is
Yeah.
something that could be dangerous on a mind that is vulnerable
That's
to
right.
food restriction.
Well, and that's why it's so important to be medically supervised in most cases to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that things are going
Mm-hmm.
right. So I think
Yeah,
that you're a good testament to using yourself as your own science experiment, really. Testing yourself out in your kitchen and as well, because it's true. I mean, we got to find out what works for you. And I'm happy you found something that has worked to drop down that inflammation because, sadly, most doctors are just looking for that band-aid solution and not for the cause. And you've been able to find that root cause. You were able to tap into where that inflammation was and start to get rid of it. And that's fantastic. Your body will heal itself because of it. And you'll feel so
I
much better.
sure hope
So
so.
it will. And so it's such an inspiration to so many people. And I think with your show, your own journeys, you've been able to inspire so many people who are watching your shows. And so how do you stay inspired, to continually develop new recipes, new content, to take care of your health and do the things that are not always easy. So how do you
Hon-
stay inspired?
Honestly, it's the comments. The comment section is my favorite part of the job. The comment section that just praises the recipes. I love that. I love that when they make the recipe and they tell me it's the best thing they ever ate. I love that so much. My ego can hardly take it. The other thing, though, is sometimes, and this is not often, it's not the most common thing, but I do get comments from people saying they used to be vegan, or they want to be vegan, or they want to be vegetarian, but keto really works for them. But my recipes are giving them the idea that they could try being plant-based again. Maybe not completely plant-based, but at some meals. And that gives me so much satisfaction because after I watched Earthlings, I felt like I found my purpose in life. And this brings me back to my purpose.
I love it.
That's what really inspires me.
I love that. And I like how you said that, the content that you are promoting and your journey is inspiring others to recognize that they can add more plants into their diet. And good point there. You don't have to be full vegan like we have chosen to do. Everybody's got their own reasons for that. However, of course we love animals so much that we both are huge advocates for it, but at least they've been able to be inspired to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe I don't have to be as meat based. Now, can you share, is there any particular feedback or a success story from a viewer who have tried your recipes or have been inspired by your shows? Is there anything that stands out that you might want to share?
I don't want to get too specific, but like I mentioned, there's just been a handful of comments where someone has said they can try being plant-based again because I'm showing them that someone else is doing it. But the other ones that really touch me is when someone is not even vegan at all. They don't care. It's not really their wheelhouse, but they have someone in their life that they love who is vegan and has different needs. Like maybe they are diabetic and their doctor has told them to go low carb, but now they can offer them that particular vegan option. One in particular I'm thinking of is my vegan keto bread, because when you think bread, you think impossible to be vegan, or not impossible to be vegan. Bread can be vegan, but if you think bread, it's impossible to be keto, right? Now, long time ketoers are going to say, no, we can make bread, and they make it out of bread. Egg whites is what they make it out of. This is actually a comment that I'm getting more commonly because this recipe just keeps getting seen by new people for some reason. Is my vegan keto bread recipe. It's made from wheat protein. So it's not for people with gluten sensitivities necessarily. But if you don't have a gluten sensitivity, this is really great. It's made from vital wheat gluten. It's made from oat fiber, which is the husk of the oat, the outer skin of the husk, as well as ground flax, and then your usual yeast, water, and get this, sugar.
Mm,
Because the yeast needs something to eat. It turns into ethanol and carbon dioxide to raise the bread so it actually feels and looks like bread. It's springy like bread. You toast it and it eats like real bread. So over here, I'm keto, but still eating sandwiches.
that's great. I love it. I'm gonna have to look up that recipe for sure.
So it is a way to get higher protein in your bread if you want it. Like I said, I don't recommend keto for everyone, but these kind of foods can be a healthy part of your diet if you want them to be. Or it's just for fun. Or maybe
Yeah.
you're trying to make gains and you need extra protein. I don't know. I don't judge.
Exactly. I think we're all those of us who are always in the gym trying to make gains or always looking for more protein. I love it.
Yeah, I'm trying to
So
make legs of steel right now. That's
there
my
you go.
goal.
There you go. It'll happen. It'll happen with that high protein diet for sure. So beyond Will It Tofu and Will It Cheese, are there other projects or series that you're considering for the future?
Oh, there are always ideas and not enough time to do them. And
Yeah.
also the other thing is, can I can I diversify outside of the kitchen? I don't know. I am really loving longboarding and snow skating.
Okay,
This is
cool.
completely different from what I usually do. But a few years ago, my partner decided he's going to take up longboarding, and I decided I don't want to get left behind. So I got aboard as well, and I fell in love with it. But every single summer I get injured, so we're going to have to do something about that. Don't get injured. And then we picked up snow skating. Have you heard of snow skating?
With the short skis, is that what I mean, or no?
That is one way of snow skating, but that's not what I'm thinking of. The one I'm thinking of is basically they put a skateboard on top of a ski. They
Oh,
attach it. So it's called a bi-deck snow skate. And you kind of ride down hills like you would on a snowboard, except you're not strapped in. So you're standing on the board, so you can shift your feet around.
oh,
So
okay.
it's kind of fun that way. And also it's a little bit more challenging. So therefore, small hills feel big. So I can go out to a
Okay.
neighborhood hill when it snows
I
and snow
love
skate
it.
down that.
That's kind of fun. That's what I didn't
It
like
is,
about snowboarding is having my feet attached to the
oh
board.
my gosh, we have extra boards. You should come one time when it snows again.
That would be fun. Hopefully it won't snow again though until next year.
It's only March,
I know.
early March. We're definitely going to get a dump at least once, maybe
All right.
twice.
All right.
So get ready.
Rain on this summer, baby.
So, I
Okay.
mean, what I'm trying to say is if I can attract people to these sports in a very safe way, I mean, maybe I could pivot. Maybe I don't have to be in the kitchen all the time.
There you
I don't
go.
know who will like it, but that's something I'm really excited about because I think that a healthy lifestyle really helps you become a healthier in your mind, healthier
Hmm.
in your mood. And I actually think that makes us or allows us to make more compassionate choices. And if I
Absolutely.
could bring something fun and active to my audience, I don't know if they'll like it, but it would be really fun if they did.
Absolutely. And those activities that you're doing are outside, right? You breathe the fresh air,
Hmm.
you connect to nature, and you're absolutely right that when our mind feels better, we can make better choices, more compassionate for ourselves and for others.
I feel that in our world, people, especially right now with everything that's going on in the world, people are stressed out. And
Hmm.
it's really hard to say, you know what, pile this, pile this pressure, additional pressure on yourself
Yeah.
because, I don't know, because animals, right? It's really hard to say, consider even more problems on top of your already really harsh problems. Consider all those things. And I think that when we're healthier, we can actually shoulder more of a burden and it doesn't feel as much of a burden.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and I'm a big believer that when we feel good about ourselves, we treat ourselves and each other better with
I
more
think so.
kindness, right?
I really think so.
Yeah. So let's just wrap up here, Mary. So what message or takeaway do you really want your viewers to get from your content, sorry, and your own personal journey? Is there an overarching message that you really would like to kind of put out there or hope that your viewers gain from you?
I think it's the message that has defined my last decade and maybe a little bit longer than that. And it's that we have one life that we know of. You've got to live it in a way that makes you feel good inside. And if that means following your compassion, follow it. That's it. I'm here to make it easier if I can, but it's up to you.
Absolutely love that. We do. Life is short. It's got to make us happy. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for your time and your insights
Thank you,
today.
Rachel.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have been able to have this conversation today. I'm sure the listeners have gotten some great value from the conversation. I really hope that people tune into Mary's Test Kitchen and see what else you've got going. So, where can they find you? Tell me where people can find you, Mary.
Well, you can find me on YouTube. Just go onto YouTube and search for Mary's Test Kitchen, or you can go to my blog, which is marystestkitchen.com,
Awesome.
as
You're
well as
also Instagram, you're also on.
Instagram, although I'm not really there.
Okay.
I
So,
try to be.
is
I try to
YouTube
be.
kind of where we can find you the most?
Totally.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Well, what I'll do is I'll also put the links to connect with Mary on the show notes. So you can find that at rjowellness.com/podcast and go to episode 7. And you will find all the links to find Mary will take you right directly to her YouTube channel. So you can start tofu-fying everything in your kitchen. So thanks again, Mary, for being here today. And I'm excited to see what's to come for you.
Thank you so much. It was great being with you.
Thank you. So until next time, everyone, keep rocking your wellness. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Rockin Wellness Podcast. Make sure to visit my website at www.rjowellness.com, where you can subscribe to the show and check out all the show notes. While you're at it, if you found value in this podcast, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about it, that would help out too. You may choose to join the R.J.O. Wellness community to take advantage of the freebies, courses, and coaching that will take your voyage to the next level, or support this podcast with your monthly membership. Until next time, my friends, keep rocking your wellness.